This podcast is part of the Big Heads Media Podcast Network. Go to bigheadsmedia.com for more great podcasts.
You are plugged in for the Podcast Wrestling Society. Give us a follow on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at PODWRES Society.
Faith is the place, and the sky's the limit.
Now, your host, he is the one and only Troy Adams.
Welcome to our second December edition of a classic Starrcade review on the Podcast Wrestling Society. I'm your loving leader, benevolent host, Midwest Monster, and the Doctor of Death, Troy Adams. And joining me today is the Bobby Eaton to my Jim Cornette. Co-hosting today is Rob from Random Ramblings with Rob podcast. What's up, man?
I am very well, sir. Thank you for the introduction. And it's apropos that you would say Dr. Death, because he is on this pay-per-view somewhere.
Yep, I'm trying to squeeze in all the references I can to this night in Chicago. While we're talking about squeezing things in real quick, let's talk about squeezing in time to shave your sack. That's right, support for Podcast Wrestling Society comes from Manscaped, who is the best in men's below-the-belt grooming. Manscaped offers precision-engineered tools for your family jewels. And we're going to have some fun talking about going back in time today to 1987 for this. Let's not go back to a time when shaving was not so easy and delicate on your undercarriage region, shall we say, or as the American Dream would say, if you will. We've all had bad experiences. I know I never used electric trimmers on my sack meat ever since the first time when it didn't go so hot. And yeah, let's just say when I get nicked, I bleed a lot. And I never want to have to experience anything like that ever again. And now with Manscaped, I don't ever have to. This is the first time in years I've ever put an electric trimmer anywhere near my sack meat. And that's why Manscaped has redesigned the electric trimmer. Their Lawnmower 2.0 has proprietary skin-safe technology, so this trimmer won't nick or snag your nuts. Manscaping accidents are finally a thing of the past, and don't use the same trimmer on your face as you're using on your balls. That's just nasty. I got my face trimmer from my wife last year, and I got my Manscaped Perfect Package 2.0 this year. So, I'm keeping nice and trim on top and on bottom. Manscaped also has the Crop Preserver, an anti-chafing ball deodorant and moisturizer. You already put deodorant on your armpits, don't you? Well, why are you not putting deodorant on the smelliest part of your body? Get 20% off plus free shipping with the code BIGHEADS at manscaped.com. Always use the right tools for the job. Your balls will thank you. Get 20% off and free shipping. Use the code BIGHEADS at manscaped.com. That's 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com, and use the code BIGHEADS. That's BIGHEADS. It was a big night in NWA history. It was a big night in WWE history as well. We'll get to that. But yeah, as some of you may notice, I have a different co-host this week. Delvin from the Delvin Cox Experience and PlayStation Experience filled in last week. And Greg was supposed to be on this week, but, life in December is crazy, so It didn't happen. And thank the good Lord above that Rob was able to step in at the last minute, and thank you for that.
No problem. I need to go back and educate myself from time to time on some professional wrestling, because I'll be the first to admit for this podcast that I had never seen Starrcade 87. So it was a brief glimpse into the past for myself. It's
fun. I mean, all in all, the card wasn't phenomenal, I don't think, but it was fine. It was a good classic look into late and mid 80s NWA, and there's a lot of history surrounding it all. But yeah, it's good to look back every now and then. Hopefully the listeners like it as much as we did. I know this was actually tied on the poll. I know we made a poll, bro, a couple of weeks ago. I actually made about three different eras of Starrcade. The three winners of that went on to a super poll. The winner of that, it was actually a tie between 87 and 92, and I made the lazy decision, and it was kind of a combo decision. I'd already seen 87, and I had notes for it, so I went, I just want to use these notes.
You basically cheated.
A little bit. I mean, like I said, it was a tie, so it's like it did technically win. The other thing is there's more to talk about here than in 92. 92 was Battle Bowl.
Oh, yeah.
And it wasn't it's not historically one of them, but people are like, man, do you remember Battle Bowl in 92? So,
which, what I think AEW holds that trademark, well, specifically Cody Rhodes.
Did he buy Battle Bowl?
I believe.
Look, Dusty came up with some good stuff, and I know Cody loves it, but man, it's like, calm down. You don't have to get all the trademarks, man.
Well, I just believe it's specifically preserving his father's legacy. That's all.
I get it. I hope AEW doesn't suddenly come out with AEW Battle Bowl.
I don't know, but I would be intrigued.
I thought it was cool they did a special, or they're doing a special Bash at the Beach edition of Dynamite, which Delvin will be at, by the way. Apparently he got tickets for that thing.
I know. I told him about it, and he went and bought tickets.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to get an in-person review from him on that, because it should be fun.
Yeah, your man on the sidelines, Delvin Cox. Oh
yeah, he wears so many hats in the podcasting world. It's crazy.
That's why he's bald.
Because they fit better. But yeah, so that was the decision. Went into the decision that I made with going into 87 here. There's just more history. I will ask, before we actually dive into the show here, could you kind of give a quick synopsis on your podcast?
Oh, well, I'm glad you asked. As mentioned in the introduction, I host the Random Ramblings with Rob podcast. It's been a podcast going on 4 years in January. So it's just me speaking to, you guessed it, random individuals from the internet and my childhood and military career. And we talk about anything and everything. I mean, there's no set topics. I just turn the recorder on, and, I have my general questions from a curiosity standpoint, but we just pretty much ramble about anything and everything. Nice. Yeah. I like some podcasts like that are more free flowing. I know Delvin's podcast is kind of free like that sometimes. Have you been on Delvin's show? Yeah. I was on there one time forever ago, and it was kind of. So it was okay. He hit you with the 5 questions then, huh? He did. It got a little more, or I should say, a little less appropriate when we did the Patreon episode. He kind of let loose a little more. But he always mixes it up, like, because I asked him. He's on the same network as me, the Big Heads Media Network, by the way. Go to bigheadsmedia.com. And I asked him, I said, did you do your sponsor, your live read, so to speak, for Manscaped? And he said, well, this coming episode is about suicide prevention, so I felt putting in a spot about shaving your junk probably wouldn't be the best for that episode. Probably. Yeah, so he made the smart decision, I think, with that one. But, yeah, all in good taste. Right. But speaking of good taste, yeah. I thought you were about to say, speaking of balls. I was like, what? Yeah, no, let's not do that. But I will. Is your podcast available pretty much everywhere at this point? I don't know. Name something off the top of your head. I'll tell you if it's there. iHeartRadio. It's there. Spotify. Is there. Apple Podcasts. Is there.
Okay, that's kind of the standards. I assume Google Play and all that.
Of course.
Okay, yeah, those are the standards. Those are the ones that really matter. I mean,
recently Pandora.
Oh wow, well, I'm not sure because I don't have the Pandora app, so I never.
I don't either
think about it. Yeah, I don't think about it, so I'm like, am I on Pandora? I don't know. I'm on everything else except for iHeartRadio for some reason.
Well, yeah, I'm just like, if there's a place that I can put the podcast, I put it there, even if I don't have the app. So, like, I seen Pandora opened up its submissions for podcasts, so I just threw that in there real quick, and then I erased the app.
Nice. Yeah, I might have to do that because I don't think I'm on Pandora. iHeartRadio won't write me back for some reason, even though I've got both of my other podcasts on iHeartRadio. That's the one that's like, this is the one that's, sticking. Speaking of which, by the way, my other two podcasts, cheap plug, Retro Wrestling Review, RRR. Go check that out. We're on the Big Heads Media Network, and we are on the No Please Don't Podcast Network. Go to nopleasedon'tpodcast.com/RRR. We cover everything not on the WWE Network that we consider retro. So,
and that's funny because in the early iteration of this show, that's how I used to announce it, because it's the Random Ramblings with Rob. So I would be like, this is the RRRPC.
Nice. Yeah, it said a pirate's favorite podcast.
Yes, the R podcast.
Yes. The other one, by the way, is Cinemarks. That's CINE/Marks, where Marks for cinema. Yep.
I get it. Yes. Mm-hmm.
So somebody actually asked me, they're like, well, because they took a picture of the Cinemarks, or the Cinemark Theater, and they said, well, isn't that the name of your podcast? I said, no, we have a dash in the center, and we put an S on the end. So
we don't want no copyright problems.
Yeah, we are free of that. We took a long hiatus, but we are back with 2 Christmas specials. One dropped this week. Another one drops next week. So be on the lookout for those. But enough plugging of other shows, I guess.
All the holes are plugged.
Yes, they are. I think it's time to actually get into subject at hand. It's NWA Starrcade 1987, a.k.a. Chi-Town Heat. The Chi-Town Heat was one of the taglines, along with Glory Bound, which people don't usually point to that one. Took place on a Thursday, November 26, 1987, which was Thanksgiving. Did you know Starrcade used to take place every Thanksgiving?
It was the Survivor Series of its time.
Yes. Well, Survivor Series, we'll get into that just in a minute. But the venue was the UIC Pavilion in Chicago, Illinois. They had an attendance of 8,000. It was a smaller venue, so that's all they could cram in there. They were hanging from the rafters. Yeah,
and what I noticed about this event, you talk about the small crowd and the smaller venue, which makes for good audio sound for the audience and everything, because that place was loud from start to finish.
Yeah, they were super into all of it, even the stuff that was meh. I mean, yeah, they were into it. So, it was, Chicago always makes for a good crowd, 9 out of 10 times anyway. Mm-hmm. This was the 5th annual Starrcade event and the first ever NWA event not only to be broadcast on closed circuit, which, by the way, nobody talks about this. JCP, or Jim Crockett Promotions, who owned NWA, WCW at the time, they innovated wrestling on closed circuit. Vince innovated on pay-per-view, which was bigger, obviously, but for not giving away your age, but do you remember closed circuit at all? Because that was before my time.
I was an outside kid, so I rarely watched television. So I do remember there was a point in time to where TV would actually cut off at night, and you couldn't watch no more because you wasn't on. But more or less, I was an outside kid. So I discovered wrestling later on in life, even though I lived through the 80s and the early 90s and all that.
Yeah, the thing with closed circuit, though, is it was actually kind of like how people nowadays will go to Buffalo Wild Wings or something like that to watch the pay-per-view on the TVs there with a bunch of people. They would actually have like theaters and arenas would put up there on their Jumbotron. They would show the show, and you would pay to go in and sit kind of like at a theater and to watch the show. That was closed circuit. That was WrestleMania. Was it three?
Three, I believe, because they did it in different places, right?
That was 2, which, by the way, was awful.
Either or.
in WrestleMania 2, now in the archives, it was an awful show. But WrestleMania 3, it was a big thing. They had it in Detroit or Pontiac, whatever the hell, and lots of traffic getting to the Dome and getting to the closed circuit locations and stuff like that. So roadways around Detroit were very tied up at the time. But this was on closed circuit, and it was on pay-per-view. This was a very first ever NWA event to be broadcast on pay-per-view.
Very lucrative, I can imagine.
It should have been, but to compete with Starrcast, the WWF introduced the Survivor Series event and held it on the same night as Starrcade.
I see what you were alluding to earlier.
Yes.
And we both did the same thing. We called it Starrcast.
Oh, did I call it? Well, Starrcade, Starrcast. Frickin' Conrad Thompson, damn it. But to compete with Starrcade, the WWF introduced Survivor Series, lost my spot. The WWF also limited the amount of pay-per-view providers that would carry Starrcade by not allowing providers to carry WrestleMania 4 if they did carry Survivor Series exclusively, or did not carry Survivor Series exclusively.
That Vince McMahon.
Yep. Only a small amount of providers called his bluff and actually carried Starrcade, so it drew a 3.3 buy rate, while Survivor Series drew a 7.0 buy rate. That's that's a big difference.
Yeah, big disparity there.
This was just the first of, that wasn't their fault, like JCP's fault for that, but it was just the first in a long line of, tripping over themselves. This next one, another blunder of the event, is that Greensboro, North Carolina, famously felt crapped on because they didn't get Starrcade like they usually did every prior year. They actually took this event to Chicago, like I had mentioned. So Greensboro felt betrayed and kind of crapped on, and they were still a big market, but it took a long time, and it was never really the same.
Had to get those loyal fans back, right?
Yeah, it was tough, and when you screw over a territory, at least back in the day, it was really hard. A lot of wrestling companies have killed towns, one way, shape, or form, and that was one of them.
Yeah, there's a lot of, in hindsight, there's a lot of selfish things or whatever. You get mad at a company that's trying to expand their reach outside of their, small little bubble, to provide money for themselves and their workers, and you get mad about it.
Yep. Well, that's why I was at the very first NXT takeover in Brooklyn, and I remember whenever NXT, the NXT show was in Full Sail and they would talk about that event coming up, the crowd would boo and say we deserve it and all this other stuff. And Kevin Owens actually cut a vicious promo on them and told them that they were selfish and pieces of crap, and he hated performing in front of them because they were the most ungrateful fans ever. Exactly.
Full Sail is their home base. They get to see all and everything just about. Let them travel and do their thing.
Right. And it's a small little sound stage at a college. So it's like, come on, guys. Do you not want this brand to expand? Brooklyn 1 sold out. It was a great event. And I remember in the crowd, we all chanted Full Sail sucks during the show.
That was very rude of you.
They deserved it. I will say that. They full on deserved that. And they still sell out that little sound stage for NXT on a weekly basis. So whatever.
I don't even think they pay for that, do they? I think it's just free.
I don't know. They might pay for it, especially now.
I have no clue.
It might be a. It's different because it's like on a college campus.
Yeah.
Whereas, because I was thinking of like the TNA deal. Where
yeah.
Like, if you're in the park, show them your park pass and you can get in for free. But I don't know if it was the same way at Full Sail. It could have been. But so that's the preamble to the show and stuff that you need to know. I guess we're going to take a quick break real quick and tell you about some other great podcasts on the Big Heads Media Network. There are plenty of them. Like I said, go to bigheadsmedia.com. Every section now has their own, or every genre, I should say, has their own specific web page that has all of those specific, whether it's true crime or pro wrestling or MMA or football or whatever the hell you're into. So go to bigheadsmedia.com, check that out. When we come back, we'll get into the actual event of Starrcade 87 Chi-Town Heat.
Hey, this is Will and Dave from the Read Option Podcast.
Your go-to source for Pac-12 football. No matter your team in the conference, we're going to cover them.
Find us and other great podcasts on bigheadsmedia.com or anywhere you can find great podcasts.
Hello, Gonzaga Hoops fans. I'm Andy Patton, host of the new Score Zags Score podcast. It's the start of what should be another outstanding season for the Zags, and I'm here to provide 3 episodes per week detailing everything you need to know about this brand new, up-and-coming Gonzaga team. With 8 new freshmen and transfers on the roster, let me give you updates, analysis, and recaps of each game this season, while also diving into recruiting for upcoming seasons and providing regular recaps of the 7, yes, that's right, 7 Zags currently playing in the NBA. Subscribe wherever you get podcasts. You won't want to miss out.
Hey everyone, it's Cameron and Kyle from the Missouri Sports Podcast, inviting you to listen to our show where we discuss everything Missouri Tigers.
Join us for in-depth game previews and breakdowns, recruiting insights, and reactions to important news, with a few other antics and shenanigans along the way.
You can listen to us on iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Spotify, and follow us on Twitter at Mizzou Sports Pod.
Love you, bye.
All right, we are back, and that means we'll dive right into Starrcade 87. First thing I noticed right off the bat was that the ring apron said TWN.
Yeah, I didn't know what that was.
It stood for the Wrestling Network.
Ah.
And it was short-lived, I'll say.
I can imagine, because I have not heard of it outside of this viewing of this pay-per-view.
Yeah. I don't think it. I don't know if it ever cropped up again, or if they tried it, people didn't give a crap and they moved the hell on. But basically, this is the report I got on the internet and whatever. So don't at me for using this. But I don't know who the hell would defend Bill Watts. But Bill Watts basically conned Jim Crockett into buying his UWF territory. The oil industry. Mm-hmm. The oil industry went down in Watts' territory. They were not selling tickets, and Vince McMahon flat out refused to buy him out. So Watts convinced Crockett that Vince wanted to buy his territory and his TV, so Crockett bought him out to make the TWN.
Mm-hmm.
So
con artist, conniver.
Yeah, Bill Watts wasn't what you would call a nice man, we'll say. He famously ended any chance he ever had of getting back into the wrestling industry, if he ever wanted to, that is, by going on a very racist and sexist rant back in the 90s. So this was after he got fired from WWE.
Seems like an old white man thing.
Yeah, from Oklahoma that calls himself the Cowboy.
Yeah.
He was very, I don't know, it was weird because when Jim Ross talks about him, he says the Cowboy didn't see color. He only saw one color, green. And he liked pushing people like Junkyard Dog or whatever because there was a large group in his territory that liked Junkyard Dog, and not just because of his skin color.
Well, see, that's the thing, though. I mean, when you do see green, I mean, it doesn't matter who is the most popular person as long as that person is producing you the most money. So when the ain't getting no money, I'm sorry for cussing, but he, that's when, all that angst and all those other things start to come out. I was like, well, he ain't making me no money, so F him and so on and so forth.
Yeah, well, he lost Junkyard Dog at one point. So famously, he brought in every black wrestler he possibly could, made him a giant baby face, whether he could wrestle or not, didn't matter. And he threw him out there as the next Junkyard Dog, and none of them panned out. And Bruce Pritchard always said, he's like, he doesn't need to be a black superstar. He just needs to be a superstar with charisma. He's like, they're not interchangeable. But yeah, so that was that. But yeah, Bill Watts was a heck of a guy. According to Jim Cornette, when Bill Watts quit, I don't know if he quit or was fired from WWE. I guess he quit technically. When he left WWE, he lived in a corporate housing apartments, whatever. He took a crap in the corner of one of the rooms and then moved out.
Sounds very Randy Orton-esque.
That's such a classy move for a classy guy.
And I'm just thinking about the logistics of some of those things or whatever. Like, we all heard the famous story of Randy Orton pooping in somebody's bag and whatnot. So I'm just like, how do you as a human being just like, because I know whenever I had to take a poop, I got to pee also. So he had to squat, hold his urine in, maybe, I don't know.
Maybe he peed on it. I don't know.
Hold himself up somehow and then not get the, I don't know. There was so much involved in taking a crap without a toilet.
Yeah, it's man, it's a lot that I just don't want to think about. But I know it's odd.
I know, and we've covered a lot of things. We still haven't touched the first match yet.
Yeah, this first match, not a lot to get into, but it's a 6-man match. It's Eddie Gilbert, hot stuff Eddie Gilbert, Rick Steiner, and Larry Zbyszko versus
who are the bad guys.
Right, yeah, and they took on the, oddly enough, babyface team of a very young Sting with his rat tail intact. Michael P.S. Hayes.
Yeah, I was about to say, you better put the P.S. on his name.
and Jimmy Jam Garvin. This match went on for 15 minutes and got 2 3/4 stars from the Observer. Sting at this time was announced as Every Man's Nightmare Sting.
Yeah. And then who was the opposite of on the other team was Every Man's Nightmare. I forget who it was.
I don't even know.
I don't know if it was Zbyszko or the other guy, but yeah, they announced him as Every Man's Nightmare. So they had 2 opposing forces on either team.
Wow. Yeah, I know Eddie Gilbert was usually just hot stuff. Rick Steiner, I don't know. He was kind of young at this point.
Yeah, Rick Steiner was the dog-faced gremlin.
Yeah, I don't know if they might have been announcing him as that at the time. I don't know. He
had it on his tights, though. I mean, not his tights, his entrance jacket.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's I forgot about that. And then Larry Zbyszko was the living legend, Larry Zbyszko, which he took from his mentor, Bruno Sammartino.
Word.
But Rick Steiner, by the way, was jacked to the frickin' gills at this point. Yeah,
Rick Steiner then looked like what his brother Scott Steiner would be later.
Yeah, it was. He was a big dude.
Very strong.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. Both of the Steiners were just like ridiculously strong. In the end, Hayes had Gilbert in a sunset flip, but the match ended in a time limit draw. It was, I don't know. I thought it was kind of boring.
Well, now, see, this is where my notes come in. So I just have a couple of observations or whatever. I'm not going to get too in-depth with a lot of things. But just going back and watching this old classic wrestling, compared to what I normally look at now with the current product, you notice a lot of nuances and a lot of things. Just the way they pander to the crowd is way different from what they do now. And there's a certain instance to where Michael Hayes came in, P.S. Hayes, and he was hyping up the crowd. He was kind of like doing the foot stump, kind of getting them to do the clap thing. And Eddie Gilbert, on his opponent at the time, was kind of swaying his shoulder side to side with him, kind of going with the beat too. And I thought that was pretty funny. That referee, Mike McGraw, I believe he had a hand in why the match finished like this. For me, viewing it, it kind of made me feel like the match was supposed to end at the exact same time the time limit was out, but the referee was just incapable of, busting the move and making that happen, because he was really slow. I mean, I believe he was just past his prime, and he shouldn't have been refereeing a lot of these matches on this card.
The NWA did that with a lot of referees, I noticed. So, there were certain territories that kept referees around so long that they were too old to get down to make the count.
Yeah, and that happened a lot in this match.
Yeah, there was one guy that was so old. He refereed until he was so old he couldn't get down and up, so he just literally stomped his foot to make the count.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So,
and then that goes back to loyalty, man. Just loyal to their employees at that time. Sometimes. Yeah,
it's admirable. I will say, give him a nice long career. But yeah, and it was nice to see Michael Hayes on the good side for once. Him and Jimmy Jam, because usually when they're heels, when I watch these old NWA events, the crowd is chanting homosexual slurs at them throughout the whole match.
Mm-hmm.
So
because their characters were flamboyant.
Yes, there was one. I can't remember the exact event, but Greg and I reviewed it. So everybody go sift through the archives. But they wore like sparkly pants with suspenders, and then had like weird face paint on, like girly, like drag queen face paint.
Yeah,
it was odd, but either way, the next match is a guy.
I got one more thing before I pass on. It's just one thing that I noticed. The ring was hella smaller than what we normally see today. So there was I think Sting was very young in his career at this time, maybe, because from what I just noticed, the in-ring work wasn't as crisp, and a lot of the punches that he was throwing was like really making some contact. But there was a particular point in the match to where I believe it was Eddie Gilbert or Rick Steiner had Jimmy Jam down on the mat, and he was reaching for the tag. And before Rick Steiner went to his corner to tag out, he grabbed him by the foot and prevented him from tagging in Sting. Now, the ring is pretty short. So once he pulled him in, he gave him an Irish whip into the ropes, into his own corner, which Sting was like fingertips. I mean, he could have just kind of sneezed or just blinked and tagged himself in, and he could have been into the match. That was just a little bit of something that I found that was odd, because he was desperately trying to get a tag in a Sting, and he was that close to him to where he almost bumped him by accident, and he didn't tag himself in. But I mean, that's not how the match was written. So,
yeah, I noticed that a lot. There was a lot of hard contact back in the day, in the old NWA days.
Yep.
Some of it didn't look very pretty.
No.
Speaking of not looking very pretty, by the way, oddly enough, with the two men who were in this match, it was Dr. Death Steve Williams versus Barry Windham for the UWF heavyweight title.
Sir, I'm gonna applaud you for your transition. Sorry to bust you up there.
Right. It went 7 minutes 2 seconds, and it got a dud from the Wrestling Observer.
Well, I mean, for me, just looking at this match, first time seeing it ever, it was just like, it was rough, as far as their grappling and everything, but I enjoyed it. It was like rough, and like these two was really trying to fight each other. It gave it an era of realism to me. I
wasn't like a huge fan of this. However, I wouldn't have given it a dud. Mm-hmm. I mean, like, Steve Mongo McMichael's matches got better ratings than this.
And I don't see how.
Yeah, he was awful. Mm-hmm. I said this is one of the first times we see Dr. Death on a national scale, because up until here he was either in Japan or he was territory wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
He never went to WWF, so he wasn't on like national TV like that.
Strong.
I mean, yeah. Oh, yeah. He was a big hoss of a dude, also from Oklahoma.
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Death sells his junk throughout the match after going for a leapfrog and getting headbutted right in the dangling.
See, in what I think, I don't know. I don't think that was planned per se, but they did a good job of playing up on it after the fact. And what the whole story of the match was like, these were two honorable guys in this ring. And, they started off with the good handshake and everything. And they had a couple of back and forths to where they ended in the stalemate. They shook hands and everything. And that was the story of the match. These guys was going to play it fair down the middle. But toward the end, which you'll see, it didn't kind of pan out that way. So I got the story of the match. All's fair in love and war, But what I do have in my notes as to comment to the previous match, get that damn ref out of there.
Yeah, some of these refs were rough to watch their stuff, especially if anybody checks out Retro Wrestling Review. Santiago and I like to make comments about the various refs, be it old American refs or the Mexican refs who just we don't know what the hell they're seeing and what the hell they're doing. But yeah, this one to me it looked like they called an audible. With Dr. Death fighting, it looked like he was like legit fighting to keep Barry down with an Oklahoma roll for the win.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So,
and and that was the thing about it. It was just like when the headbutt happened, Barry was, treating him like, hey, giving him time, giving him his space, hey man, it was an accident. I didn't mean that. He was being very sympathetic to the situation. But when that happened to him, when he went out the ring and he hurt his leg and he was trying to, he thought he was going to get that in kind, but that's when Dr. Death pulled him in and rolled him up, like you were saying, and he won the match. And you could kind of see in his face after he's like, you motherfucker, I was kind and courteous to you, but you didn't do the same for me. That's kind of the theme of the match for me.
Yep. Dr. Death wins even after getting headbutted in the dang. So
this next one though,
this next one was something to behold. If nothing else, for its historical significance. It's the Rock and Roll Express versus the Midnight Express with Jim Cornette and Big Bubba Rogers. It's the Skywalker's scaffold match.
That's crazy. Never seen one before.
It went 9 minutes, 35 seconds and got 3 stars from the Wrestling Observer. I believe this was the loudest the crowd had been for this whole thing, next to the one of the following matches. I'm going to say they rated this 3 stars simply based on the crowd reaction. I mean, it wasn't bad, but scaffold matches are never good. At least not to me. I'm going to just go down my notes real quick. The first thing I had was the Bubba Slam. I had that down because I popped for that. When he called it and he did it, I was like, oh, that was great. Then just the crowd, the sheer loudness of it for, from start to end, from the entrances to the ringing of the bell, which they did not have a lot of. I don't even think they had a bell throughout this whole show. And it was scary. I had an expletive there, so I didn't put that in because I forgot about the cussing stuff. And there was no safe way to get down from there. And it kind of took me out of it because, I know they were trying to be as safe as possible doing this thing. But it was just like one of the guys from the Midnight Express just basically put himself down on the ladder so they can work out the spot of him falling down. There was no... Yeah, he just kind of like, I don't even think there was even contact. He just went down on his own and they started, doing the play up on the ladder just so he can be closer to the canvas when he fell. Yeah, I've never liked these kinds of matches. For some reason, TNA tried to bring it back in the day. They had they called it the Elevation X, and the scaffold was in the shape of an X. Yeah, and then it's kind of the basis for the X, the other one, That was the only time they didn't use the wires for Ultimate X. Yeah, Ultimate X. There you go. Yeah, yeah, they kept up the scaffold and just used that. It was blah. This was shortly after Dennis Condrey had left the NWA, and Sweet Stan Lane joined the Midnight Express. The match started with Rogers attacking Ricky Morton as Robert Gibson was double-teamed on the scaffold by the Midnights. Rogers attempted to climb the scaffold, but Morton attacked him. Lane and Eaton attacked him, Lane and Eaton with Cornette's racket. Eaton fought back by throwing powder at Morton and Gibson.
That was funny.
Yeah, this is just so much. The teams went back and forth until Lane climbed under the scaffold.
For whatever reason.
Yeah, I don't get that. To escape? I don't know.
But that's what we were saying. There was no safe way to do this, and that was like the only way they can kind of put it in position to, have an end to it.
Yep. Yeah, the teams, let's see, Morton followed Stan Lane and pushed him off. Morton and Gibson then attacked Eaton until he fell, and the Rock and Roll Express won the match. Yeah. This was not the one where Cornette blew his knee out. That was a previous Skywalker's match.
Mm-hmm. But you glossed over the Bubba Slam. That was a pretty slam. I'm not going to lie about that.
I'm trying to remember the spot in the match where that was.
It was in the very beginning. I think that's when they attacked Ricky Morton when his partner went up.
Okay.
And then the salt, the powder or whatever, they couldn't figure out what they wanted to call it. It was like, it's the salt, it's the powder, it's the salt.
It's not salt unless it's Japanese guys, okay? Gosh, get it right. Well, that was always the old the trope wrestling thing. Yeah. It was like, it's powder for everybody else, but if it's a Japanese guy, it's a ceremonial salt.
Mm-hmm.
Like, is it though?
I don't know. It's kind of like all the different mist colors that they blow out. One to make you blind, one to do something else. I forgot.
Yeah. Yeah, because there's like
they got black, green, and red.
Yeah, I want to say he used yellow at one point. I know one of them's supposed to paralyze you. One of them's supposed to like the blind. Red. I think burns.
Mm-hmm.
The green is just it stings.
Mm-hmm.
And then the black, I think, like just knocks you out or something. I don't know, or maybe that's the one that paralyzes you.
Either or.
Yeah. They didn't stick to that in WWE. Tajiri just blew out different colored mist, and they just sold it all the same.
Yep.
I think when I take that back. I think when he started doing the black mist, I think like
that was a character change. Yeah, that was a character change for him too, because he always did the green before, and then he was like, I think he was a legit on bad guy when he started doing the black mist.
And I think that blinded them for a couple weeks. Like they would actually sell that for, a few weeks after. I think that's how he blinded Nydia like that.
Mm-hmm. And I think one of the coolest moments in wrestling history that gets glossed over, Tajiri actually was a tag team partner of the Great Muta, and they both blew mist together, and they changed colors in the air as they did it. And I was like, whoa.
Yeah, that was great. I liked when he feuded with Great Muta for a while. He held this giant thing of like his bouquet of roses that he was going to give him. And when Muta got close, Tajiri put him up in the air, blew black mist all over him, and then handed him to Muta.
Yes.
And kind of signifying like, F you, we're feuding.
I need to go back and revisit that or whatever. I only seen it in clips and GIFs and everything, but I've never actually seen it end to end.
It was good stuff if I do remember correctly. But before we take a quick break here, I'll just cover some of the backstage stuff. Jimmy Garvin takes the Freebirds' entire interview time, going on and on and on.
I can remember when fast forwarding through that and seeing like he was talking a lot.
Oh my gosh. And people go on about, Jimmy Garvin was great on the mic, whatever. I thought he was the most annoying, nonsensical promo. I was like, I like Michael Hayes because he said good stuff and he had a cool voice. Jimmy Jam I thought was annoying, and I don't know, he just seemed like too big of a ham.
I don't know, maybe it was one of those things to where like Michael Hayes knew he had it at any given moment, but he was just kind of helping this boy out to get better, so that's why he gave him more mic time.
Perhaps. I don't even know. Speaking of not good on the mic, Dr. Death cut a promo.
Oh boy.
where he rambled, and he just looked lost throughout his entire interview. That seemed to be a common thing for Dr. Death. Not to speak ill of the dead, but God, he was great in the ring, but my word, was he a horrible promo.
Mm-hmm.
Just god-awful. But anyway, I think we should take our last break of the show. When we come back, we got a few more matches to get to. Some pretty interesting ones, to say the least. So we'll tell you about some other great podcasts on the Big Heads Media Network. When we come back, we're wrapping up Starrcade 87.
The Instigator Podcast is the best source for Buffalo Sabres and NHL-focused discussion. Join us each week as we break down everything surrounding the Buffalo Sabres, the latest news from around the NHL, and feature select interviews with notable personalities from the hockey world. The Instigator Podcast can be found on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, and just about anywhere else podcasts can be found. And we look forward to having you tune in for our next episode.
Hello, mates. I'm Jack.
I'm Kenny.
And welcome to Rock and Roll Up, the music and wrestling podcast.
Here, you'll find our weekly music and wrestling podcast with our signature wacky comedy twist.
So wacky.
Expect news,
special episodes,
controversial hot takes,
and comedy features such as Kenny's rant,
Jack's joke of the week,
and of course, pun association,
musical fruit,
John Lemon.
So wacky.
So like, comment, share, and subscribe. You can find us on Spotify, iTunes, YouTube, Stitcher, and SoundCloud.
You can get involved with the conversation at Rock Roll Up Pod on Twitter and at Rock and Roll Up Podcast on Facebook and Instagram.
Are you ready to step inside the ring with these two heavyweights?
Big time.
Peace out.
All right, we're back to dive into the last few matches here on Starrcade 1987 from the National Wrestling Alliance. This next one is a title unification match.
Yeah.
It's UWF television champion Terry Taylor with Hot Stuff Eddie Gilbert in his corner versus NWA television champion Nikita Koloff.
Yeah.
Oddly enough,
the
playing
babyface.
the good guy. Yeah.
I always thought that was weird.
It was. Terry Taylor, I don't know if he was supposed to be a full-blown heel. I guess he was.
He was some hot stuff, though. I mean, Nikolai, sheesh.
Yeah, Nikolai Volkov, he I don't get it. Like, he was a huge heel as part of the Russian contingent, and then when he flipped babyface, like, the crowd loved him.
We said Nikolai, Nikita, I'm sorry.
Nikita Koloff, yes, I'm sorry.
I did the same thing when I watched it. I was like, wait a minute, that don't look like it's a different person.
Yeah. Nikita Koloff, who was the kayfabe relative of Ivan Koloff, who was an old territory wrestler, hung around. I think he was officially out of NWA at this point. He might have still been around doing stuff, but Nikita ended up being the bigger star of the two. But I'll say people said that he was super dedicated to his gimmick, like where he wasn't Russian. He's from like the Midwest, and I can't remember what his real name was. But I think he legally changed his name to Nikita Koloff, and then he would only speak with a Russian accent to everybody, even the guys in the backstage.
Hey, you gotta live it sometimes, baby.
It was, cool on his dedication, but still weird. Like, Arn Anerson said the first time he met him, he walked up and he put out his hand. He's like, "I'm Artie Lundy," and he shook his hand and he said something in Russia, whatever. And Arn was like, "Okay, then." And then he walked away and he's like, "So I see y'all went out and got yourself a real Russian." And they were like, "Yeah, right." I guess it was Barry Darso, who was Crusher Khrushchev, ratted him out. He was like, "No, dude, he's just a white guy from the Midwest." But yeah, this match went on for 18 minutes, 55 seconds, and it got 1 star from the Observer.
Well, you had a young Earl Hebner in there, which at some point he crotched Nikita and everything. He was just like, he was down in the figure 4, and somehow, some way, he kind of teabagged him. And then I was like, what? Earl, you're messing up then and you're messing up now. I don't know if this was your chosen profession.
Man, where's his mom? Come get your kid. You done goofed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was kind of sloppy or whatever, but I think they did a good job selling the, I think he called his clothesline the Russian sickle or something like that.
Yeah.
Because there was a lot of work on to his dominant arm for the move. And, he was great being, in peril, whenever he was getting worked over or when he was in that figure four, he was like, ow, I'm dying. This hurts. Please stop.
I will say this, as we mentioned, obviously Nikita got cheered huge throughout the entire match. Mm-hmm. Terry Taylor got no love, at all.
Both of those belts were beautiful too. I like those a lot.
I always liked their TV titles. They were really cool. But I will say this match, Nikita Koloff wasn't garbage.
No.
He's not in the bottom 10 or whatever, but he's not famously a good wrestler.
Mm-hmm.
This match, as happens with all of these matches when I go back in time, gave me so much appreciation for who Terry Taylor was in the ring. He was phenomenal, and he doesn't get enough credit. He makes everybody look good. In the end, Eddie Gilbert attacked Nikita Koloff's left knee with a steel chair behind the referee's back, and Taylor applied the figure four. Yeah. After Taylor accidentally knocked Gilbert off the apron, Koloff hit the Russian sickle and pinned Taylor to unify the titles.
Mm-hmm. It was just a very 80s celebration or whatever thing, because, I noticed anytime somebody won, they would jump up and down with their hands straight up in the air. I was like, this isn't weird.
Yeah, yay, I won! But, yeah, I mean, I don't know if you noticed that, but, as a kid, I don't notice that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. That's not what I'm looking for. As an adult, the more I've watched wrestling and the more I know, I'm like, my God, I'm not even looking at freaking Nikita. I'm looking at Terry Taylor here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just who is the workhorse of this match here. Who are they trying to make good in this match?
It sucks that Taylor pissed off so many people in his career and had such a just a bad personality, because I think he could have been huge.
Could have been huge. Could have been bigly.
Huge with a Y, big league. But, well, I mean, you can say he was big league as, the Red Rooster.
You know what? I didn't want to make that assumption, but he was the Red Rooster?
Yeah.
Yeah, because just the way his hair perches up in the middle, I was like, that looks like the Red Rooster, but I wasn't very sure. So, yeah, I was right in my assumption.
Yeah, he went to WWE, and Vince, for some reason, just thought, oh, he's a cocky SOB. He thinks he's the next Ric Flair. We'll make him a goddamn rooster, pal.
Those daggone questions. I mean, not questions, characters.
Yeah. He pulled it out of the box of gimmicks, and boom, there you go.
Yep.
But we just had the TV title unification in the last match. In this one, we have one of the most famous and notorious TV champions of all time. It's Arn Anerson and Tully Blanchard. But they're defending the NWA World Tag titles against Chicago's own, the Road Warriors, Hawk and Animal.
Second time of the night where the crowd was at its loudest.
Yes. And we'll get to that too. But it was 14 minutes.
Yeah. I don't want to bear the lead. Go ahead.
It was 14 minutes, 13 seconds. Got 3.5 stars. I think the ending took at least a half a star away.
Yeah.
The Horsemen bumped like crazy for the Road Warriors.
Yeah, and I thought that was weird or whatever, but it's no different from the psychology of a current day match. It just took a lot longer to get there. So, usually the babyface beats them up, and then there's a calamity happens to where, the bad guy gets the upper hand for the duration of the rest of the match. This took so long for that to happen. I was just like, this is did they make somebody mad and they was just getting their butt beat for whatever reason? But
that's what they like to do. That was Anerson and Blanchard's specialty was just bumping their butts off.
Yeah. So, now, from what I could see from never seeing this match before, and just I'm not really one to go back and look at a lot of old stuff, a lot of the time, but just watching Arn Anerson, not be an old man, and just the ease to which he did a lot of this stuff was like, wow, this is crazy.
Yeah, it was good. It was good stuff. I liked it. But yeah, the Road Warriors gained the advantage, and Blanchard knocked the referee Tommy Young outside of the ring. Animal then threw Anerson over the top rope with a back body drop. The Road Warriors performed the Doomsday Device on Arn Anerson, who was pinned by Animal, with replacement referee Earl Hebner counting the pin. However,
that's what got me. I was just like, what's wrong? I mean, obviously it wasn't them who bumped the referee out. I thought that's what the issue was, but I did not know that it was a rule back then that you couldn't throw anybody over the top rope.
Yeah. Yep. The original referee, Tommy Young, reversed the decision and disqualified the Road Warriors for throwing Anerson over the top. Anerson and Blanchard won the match and retained the titles. And in yet another instance of JCP tripping over their own junk, after Hometown Boys, the Road Warriors didn't win the titles. Chicago never drew the same for the NWA.
Threw a fit.
Yep. They killed the town.
So, I mean, going back and watching the Road Warriors or whatever, I mean, I just did not know how strong they were because I seen them later on in their career and everything. But Hawk had a hellacious vertical drop kick. He just went straight up, and he was just like, he almost missed the dude head. He went so high. Animal with he caught the dude out of the air and hit him with a power slam. That was an amazing feat of strength. And they had the spot when they both did the bear hugs, and he won Animal through, I forget who it was. I think it was Arn to freaking Animal, and he caught him and put him in another bear hug. It was just crazy.
Yeah, I almost forgot about that spot. That was fantastic. Good stuff. And it was just, they were beating the tar out of the Horsemen. The NWA booked these kind of finishes so many times. It's a wonder why they went out of business.
Yeah.
It just, whatever. Next match was Lex Luger defending the NWA U.S. title against Dusty Rhodes in a steel cage match.
I didn't even take notes for this match. I just watched it, and I was like, all right, it was what it was.
Luger had J.J. Dillon in his corner because I believe Luger was a Horseman at the time. The match went 16 minutes, 23 seconds and got 1 star.
I can see why.
From the Wrestling Observer. It was something. A stipulation of the match, besides the title being on the line, was that if Dusty Rhodes lost, he would be suspended for 90 days.
That's a nice vacation.
Yeah. Well, the referee was Johnny Weaver, or not the referee, I'm sorry, the cage door holder was Johnny Weaver, who he's I'm forgetting his wrestling gimmick.
I don't even know the significance between him and Dusty Rhodes as well, but the sleeper hold that he used was called the Weaver Lock.
Yes. Yep. Yeah. I want to say, I'm looking him up on Wikipedia right now. I should have done that earlier, but I want to say he was Mr. Wrestling, or maybe, no, I guess he was just Johnny Weaver. Oh, he was the grappler. I'm sorry. I knew he wore a mask at one point. But yeah, he was Johnny Weaver, and then he was the grappler. So he retired this year from wrestling, actually, 1987.
I was about to say this year?
Well, yeah, no. I mean, he's
2019. That's a long career.
Yeah, right. Yeah, no, he actually died on February 15th of 2008.
Man, that's got to be sad. I mean, that was right after Valentine's Day.
Yep, Valentine's Day. Bummer.
Ghostbusters 2, I see.
Kudos to anybody who gets the reference. But yeah, he was one of the first wrestlers credited with doing the sleeper hold / rear naked choke, and that's why they called it
the Weaver lock. Gotcha. Yep.
So, but he was holding the the door closed. NWA was notorious for, digging up old timers. It was like, hey, you remember this guy? He used to wrestle for us.
Sound familiar?
Now he's doing something. But yeah, so J.J. Dillon attacked Johnny Weaver, stole the key, and then he dropped said key. So he just took a chair and chucked it over the top of the cage.
Yeah.
Luger attempted to pick it up, but Rhodes hits a DDT onto the chair for the pinfall victory.
Yeah. And it was more of a distraction tactic or whatever, because when he was trying to put the key in there, the referee came and he tried to deter him off, and that's kept the referee distracted while he threw the chair in for the shenanigans.
Yeah, it was. So I couldn't tell if it was real or fake. So
that's part of a good. That's part of a good con, I guess. I mean, you can't tell if it's real or fake.
Absolutely. Yep. So that's how I like my wrestling, with the lines blurred. But word is that people in the backstage were not super happy about Dusty putting himself over Lex Luger, killing the young man's momentum.
Yeah, that's what I've always heard historically about, like, Lex Luger. They wanted him to be the next big thing, but it was just something with him that prevented that from happening.
Yeah, I mean, he had his moments.
The Lex Express.
Oh boy, that was something.
Coming down on the aircraft carrier, slamming Yokozuna and junk.
I will say this, I wasn't watching wrestling at the time. I was 5. Mm-hmm. But when I went on later and then looked back at that, I liked Lex Luger.
Yeah. And then the whole gimmick with him, when he hurt his elbow and he got the plate in there, he would do the bionic elbow with the forearm. Yeah,
because he got into a motorcycle wreck and he messed up his arm. Yeah, he had to get a steel plate put in his forearm. So he just bashed MFers in the face with it.
Yeah, it was just like today he would do it. That's when he was the narcissist, I believe. And they figured it out. And then they started making him wear the elbow pad. And, that'll be kind of like his cheat gimmick or whatever. You take the elbow pad off, hit him on the head, then he put it back on real quick.
Yeah, I remember I remember in, I want to say, WrestleMania, the arcade game or something like that.
Oh, yeah.
his finisher, he would do like the forearm, but like his arm would turn into like a metal arm when he'd nail him in the face. Good stuff. Shout out to anybody who ever had WrestleMania, the arcade game.
One of the best wrestling games ever.
I played the crap out of that thing. The roster was like 10 people, but it was fun.
Mm-hmm.
Both the U.S. title match, by the way, and the world title match about to happen are in back-to-back cage matches.
Yep.
So, why?
They didn't feel like putting the cage down.
I guess. They're like, we don't have time to tear down the cage.
Yeah, because from what I can see, I didn't even, because I skipped all the commentary in between matches there. I just went straight to the matches. Mm-hmm. I believe Dusty and Luger was like, it's all out. You do whatever to get the win. But for this one, it looked like there was actually rope breaks and all kind of things like that within this cage match. So I didn't know what the deal was there.
Yeah, I want to see Dusty Rhodes come out and cut a promo at the beginning of this. Every match going to be contested inside a steel cage. We're going to call it Lockdown, baby. That'd be great. But yeah, this one was, oddly enough, NWA World Heavyweight Champion, Hands of Stone, Ronnie Garvin, taking on Nature Boy, Ric Flair, who's challenging for the title.
Now, maybe you can fill me in on some things. You sound very educated when it comes to this old school wrestling. Was Garvin a mentor of Flair?
He was not, no. I think they were about the same age.
Well, because I mean, to me, you know, just looking at the two, just the similar styles, the gear, you know, the way they moved in the ring and everything, it's just like, you know, it was almost like when Jericho went up against Shawn Michaels or whatnot. You know, these two had the same. They had the small tights, and they both had their initials on the tights. They had the same similar boots with their initials on the boots. They both had robes. They both did chops. They both did some kind of figure four. So I'm just like, so was this the battle of the Supreme Nature Boy, or what was going on here?
That was just like an old NWA trope. Like, so many people did the figure four. So many people had blonde hair. So many people had their initials on their trunks. It was weird. I don't know. It's like, is that just like, this is what a wrestler looks like, and this is what a wrestler does?
Yeah, just the vibe of the match and everything. From me not knowing nothing about it and never seen this before, it kind of made it seem to where like Garvin was passing the torch to Flair. Because at this time, this was his 5th title reign, I believe, right?
For Flair? I think so. Yeah. Garvin, actually, the backstory of this was that the infamous booking committee of the NWA wanted to end Ric Flair's reign as champion, but their top preferences of who they wanted to be the new champion were not available at the time. Mm-hmm. So Garvin was chosen instead, and he defeated Flair to win the title back on September 25th. Garvin was notoriously like one of the most like not cared about, not thought about NWA champions in history. I don't know. People, he didn't suck. There just wasn't anything stand out about him. He had a punch, which is why they called him Hands of Stone. Mm-hmm. And he did, apparently him and Ric Flair worked together a lot. And Garvin had one of the hardest chops in the business. Mm-hmm. And they said that Flair on a nightly basis was rubbing like cream into his chest, like medicated cream, because Garvin would chop him so hard he'd rip his chest open.
Yeah. See, and that's what, now that makes a lot of sense or whatever. You said they teamed and worked together a lot or whatever. I mean, it's just almost like they rubbed off on each other. It's like, to me, like the point that I made, he was some sort of a mentor to the development of Ric Flair's character.
Yeah. I mean, Ric Flair said he enjoyed working with him, but he always got his ass kicked every single night. And Garvin was more, the legends now of Garvin usually say it's like he was not a wrestling business guy. I mean, he liked the wrestling business, but it was his job, like everything else. Yeah. He got in, he made his money,
went home,
got the hell out. Yep. Yeah. That's why when people ask him, it's like, oh, you were the NWA champion. What? And he's like, yeah.
Yep.
And it's like, cool. It made me more money, and that was it.
Yeah.
So, not that he didn't enjoy it or respect it or whatever. It just it was his job.
That was just him. Yeah.
Yeah. So and he got out of wrestling, stayed the hell out, and he's living off whatever money he had, which is why he at one point went to WWE and he was rugged Ronnie Garvin. If anybody remembers that, he wasn't exactly a standout there. He was just random Canadian babyface. So, but Flair and Garvin, as always, beat the brakes off of each other. Even though Garvin was the babyface, Flair was cheered the most, which shows how much they cared about Ronnie Garvin. Mm-hmm. In the closing moments, Garvin punched Flair, who countered with an inverted atomic drop. Mm-hmm. Flair then reversed an Irish whip, sent Garvin's head into the cage, and then pinned him to win the match and the title. Yeah, it was definitely a 2.5-star match. Nothing spectacular.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
the Starrcade was just kind of there.
Yeah, it was just like the battle of the Flairs to me. I mean, who will prevail with this gimmick after this match?
Yeah, Garvin went back into obscurity, didn't really do a whole lot of significance after. I mean, he did stuff, but just nothing that was like this level ever again. He main evented a Starrcade. This was just another show. Mm-hmm. I don't know. the aftermath of all of this was after Starrcade was outperformed by Survivor Series, JCP held the Bunkhouse Stampede pay-per-view in January of 1988. The WWF held the Royal Rumble, a television special, on the same night as Bunkhouse Stampede. And obviously it's free because it's on TV.
Mm-hmm.
In return, JCP held Clash of the Champions, the first ever, also a television special, on the same night as WrestleMania 4. Clash of the Champions was a success and drew a large cable rating, as most of them did.
Mm-hmm.
So it was just sniping back and forth. I'm going to hold my event the same night as yours, and blah, blah, blah. I'm going to counter-program you.
Yeah.
But, yeah, so that goes it with that. I've never seen a Bunkhouse Stampede. I actually want to go back and watch one now.
I've never seen it either.
It's almost like a Royal Rumble, but it takes place in a cage, and you got to throw a guy
over the cage.
Yeah,
you got to throw him over the cage.
You do. You have to literally take that from everything I've heard. You take them and drag them up and toss them outside of the cage.
Ew. That doesn't sound. That's nasty.
That doesn't sound safe.
Doesn't sound appealing at all. But I might have to look at it for a novelty standpoint.
And Dusty Rhodes won a ton of them. Shocker.
Yeah, because nobody could get his big ass up there.
Well, you know what you won when you won the Bunkhouse Stampede?
You won the top bunk at the slumber party.
That would have been hilarious, but no. You got a bronze boot statue.
Okay. How many?
It's like a trophy.
Might have to look into it, see how many people have suffered concussions from getting hit with the bronze boot.
I don't know if anybody, but yeah, like when you won, they gave you a bronzed, it was like a trophy in the shape of a cowboy boot. I don't know. Dusty Rhodes was super into Western films, if you haven't figured it out.
Yeah, I couldn't tell.
But yeah, God rest your soul, Dusty, but some of your ideas were terrible.
Hey, man, it was the 80s. They had to figure it out.
I woke up in a cold sweat with an idea of a Halloween Havoc.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
For those of you, what I'm alluding to is a Chamber of Horrors match now in the archives. Go listen to it because Greg and I had fun with it, but the match was scary, horrible.
Which was probably intended.
Yeah. Abdullah the Butcher got electrocuted. So
was it one of those things to where he grabbed it and he just shaked his arms like he was getting electrocuted? Was it one of those deals?
They locked him into an electric chair, threw a switch, and pyro went off and the lights flashed and he vibrated in his chair.
That's funny. I might have to go look at that too.
It was awful. And then I believe some of Greg's closing words were, God rest your soul, Dusty, but that sucked. Yeah, that was Dusty Rhodes famously on one of the Legend roundtables on WWE 24/7 said that. That's where I got that from. He's like, I woke up in a cold sweat with an idea, Halloween Havoc. It's like, yeah, you should have took your ass back to bed.
It be what it be, man.
But all right, well, I had fun today. Talked about some classic wrestling with you. Hope you did too.
Yes.
Next week, we are dropping an episode on December 25th, Christmas Day. Yeah, hope you all tune in to listen. It's some more old school NWA. It's Clash of the Champions 4 Seasons Beatings. And I want to say this is either the event or around the event, speaking of Dusty Rhodes, that got him fired from the NWA because Turner Broadcasting bought them out and said, no blood. And Dusty Rhodes said, well, I'm Dusty Rhodes. F you. I'm going to have the Road Warriors stab me in the eye with a spike.
Word.
So he got fired.
Defiant to the end.
He definitely was. And then he went on to wear polka dots. So that's something. But we're covering that next week, and we have an announcement for you next week as well. I don't know if I'm going to be flying solo next week or if I'll have be able to score a guest host for that one as well. But thank you for joining me today, Rob.
For sure, I appreciate the opportunity.
And again, go check out Random Ramblings with Rob. It is available everywhere you get your podcasts. Check it out: Pandora, Spotify, iTunes, iHeart, all that crap.
All those places.
And so much more.
Mm-hmm.
We will see you all next week. Later.